Thank you, Vivek. Let me just share my slides and we'll then start. I hope the slides are visible. Vivek, are the slides visible?
Yeah, slides are visible.
Okay. We'll start. So, thank you, Vivek, for this opportunity. And I think we have Amit is there from Policy Bazaar. We have Mr. James from NATCO. Dr. Ankita is here.
Yeah, hi, Dr. Vijay. I'm here.
Hi. We have Mr. Suresh here. He's the CEO from Cytical Hospital. Okay. We have Dr. Bharat Bhosale, who's a senior oncologist and the director of Sunrise Oncology Centers. Dr.
Hi,
Bharat,
hi.
you're here? Yeah,
Hi.
Dr. Bharat is also
Yes,
here.
yes, I'm here.
Okay. And do we have Dr. Venkataramanan, who's the CEO of Kalkinos Healthcare?
Yeah, I'm here, Vijay.
Yeah, okay, great. So let's start, and without any wasting time, we can. My first question is actually deals with cancer insurance issues, and there's only a single clinician among us, Dr. Bharat Bhosale, and I would like to have from his opinion. He works in different setups. He is a consultant in Bombay Hospital, Jaslok Hospital, Bridge Candy, has his own healthcare chain of daycares, and also has worked in Tata previously. So, Bharat, what do you think are the issues with insurance today?
Yes, so Dr. Vijay, see, cancer news for a patient as well as the family is anyways, devastating and painful news. And what after a series of counseling, what we start is the treatment. Now there are various aspects. If I can elaborate, it will take too much of time. So I will come to that with point by point. The first thing is, once we start the investigations, you don't have the final diagnosis, you have provisional diagnosis. So that comes under investigation. And that is where the biggest hurdle starts. Insurance companies, most of the insurance companies, I would say, not all, there are companies who don't create this hassle. The investigations are never ever approved by the companies, most of the companies, I would say. What happens, you understand nowadays, there are therapies which you don't need the admission. And then there is a clause where patient has to be admitted, and 30 days before and 30 days after that you can reimburse. But nowadays our treatment has so much advances. We do the biopsy and sometimes it comes as a ERPR positive breast cancer metastatic, and you have two drugs which are being given orally. The patient doesn't require admission at all. No, and there are many other cancers like lung cancer where you do a biopsy, the report comes as a ALK positive. These kind of therapies are point blank rejected. And you also understand the cost is not simple cost. Now, somebody who is paying continuously EMI or whatever, monthly or yearly sum ups for many years, and suddenly the company is giving rejections to a patient who and his family who they are in pain. They are in pain of this breaking bad news. So this is the biggest problem. Second thing, these oral drugs, as you mentioned, reimbursement of oral drugs, as we are not admitting, these are because of the newer innovations. And something which is better than the previous therapy, we have to adapt to the newer therapies. Now, what has happened, Vijay, most of the guidelines, including the NCCN, European, and now we have ICMR guidelines also, they have adapted themselves. These therapies are approved therapies. These are not something which we are giving in a clinical trial. These are approved therapies. Then you write these therapies, these are getting rejected. So the reason behind this, somebody of the age of 70 who has been paying the money for last 30 years, the word chemotherapy has been mentioned in their records. Now you have to understand, chemotherapy is something which is not written for each and every cancer. So the simple rejection comes that your treatment is the reimbursement will be approved only if you get chemotherapy, otherwise it will not be provided. So the thing is that these are all anti-cancer therapy, be it chemotherapy, be it oral targeted therapy, be it a biological therapy which is in the form of monoclonal antibody. Technically I can't label that as a chemotherapy. So this is all they play around the technicality. So this is a major hurdle And I feel no, many times I had to write and speak to the doctors, but there are companies which don't allow no verbal communications, and we keep on no doing all these communication for years. And you have to understand the survival of these patients sometimes no ends earlier than these reimbursements. So one must from the industry take this point, and many I see this kind of conferences where I can put up my words and the patients advocacy group also can put up their words. This is very, very important point, first ask. And thank you for asking this as a first point.
So, do you also face insurance issues with accreditation? Let's say if the hospital is not NABH, then insurance rejects these hospitals.
Yes, so far, no, not everywhere, but no, as I'm, no, I feel myself no privileged because I work in Mumbai. So, but then few of my colleagues we have discussed with this with me that accreditation sometimes creates a problem, but we have to understand it's a process. Accreditation also process which takes many months or years. So somebody should not obstruct the reimbursements if there is no accreditation, because accreditation also takes time. No, there are phases of accreditation, because this is something new they have created NABL. And if you go to rural area, we have been discussing the figure, 65% of the population, cancer population takes treatment in the rural area, where no, it is very difficult. Either you have to fasten the process and somebody has to take the responsibility. We are talking of giving therapy at lesser cost, and this accreditation process itself takes much of the cost. So where we are reducing the cost, we are adding the cost.
Okay, so to sum up, I think the issues which Dr. Bharat brought out is pre-diagnostic workup reimbursement doesn't happen for some reasons which are best known to the insurance companies. The insurance doesn't uh, give reimbursements for OPD treatments. Like if there are oral drugs, it doesn't happen. You need to take the patients indoor. Somehow it is also based on very futuristic attitude that if you have been taken a policy 30 or 40 years back, and if the developments which have happened in immunotherapy and targeted therapy, somehow the patients won't benefit from the development because you took a policy 30, 40 years back when this developments didn't exist. So this is also even seen in the radiation side and surgical side. So we'll bring Amit ji here. Amit ji, what do you think would be the solution for this? Because this is a big problem that more and more people now have insurances, and this becomes a hassle. In fact, I'll tell you, I used to work at Tata hospitals. It's only a month since I've shifted to Hinduja. What I see is that patients who have were cash paying, they get discharged immediately. But those who have insurance, they have to there's a delay in all the process. Like the discharge also doesn't happen. If you need to mark them for discharge at 8 o'clock, they would go and leave at 5 or 6 o'clock because the insurance would then have to again approve the things. So actually, it sometimes feels that having an insurance is actually a hassle in your treatment.
Right. See, and I'll give you two perspectives here from representing the insurance industry. See, first perspective is one, as you know, as was just mentioned. See, there are chances, there are cases where claims get rejected or claims get delayed, but you have to understand why it happens, right? So insurance companies cannot, at their whims and fancies, decide to reject a claim. So you have to understand insurance is at the end of the day a legal contract that a customer gets into with an insurance company, right? It has its own terms and conditions, clauses, which are definitely complicated. So customers have to understand that the biggest issue that we face is people have a health insurance policy. They don't know what it covers, what it does not cover. That has, so far has been the single biggest challenge, right? If you go back, let's say, 5 years, 10 years back, people would you typically buy the policy. Some agent will come home. They will basically get a check. They will get you to sign on a piece of paper. You won't even know what room rent capping your policy had, what sum insured your policy had, what waiting periods your policy had. So it is, at the end of the day, it is somewhere important for everybody, for everybody to understand what health insurance policy I have. So for example, does my policy cover for outpatient treatment or not? Right? If my policy does not cover for outpatient treatment, then the insurance company has all the right to reject the claim for an outpatient treatment. Right. But the good thing is, and see, because of this, there was always a lot of mistrust between customers and insurance companies, because customers used to feel that my claims are not being honored. To address this, what has happened in the last 3-4 years, especially, is that the IRDAI, the regulatory body for insurance in India, they have come up with a lot of standardization in health insurance. So now what you see is a fairly standard health insurance policy, similar to how, let's say, a car insurance policy is, right? So there are no major surprises out there. For example, daycare treatments. There is a list of daycare treatments which are typically covered. What kind of exclusion should be there? There is a list of exclusions. Like for example, earlier HIV/AIDS was excluded by all health insurance companies. Now there is a regulation which says that HIV/AIDS has to be covered. Similarly, modern treatments, robotic surgeries, which become fairly important and complicated procedures, they are all now, insurance companies are now practically forced to cover because the regulator has decided that all health insurance policies have to cover them, right? So there has been a lot of advancement because of that. Now there is way more transparency than what it used to be earlier. But that said, I would still say somewhere it is every customer's prerogative that they know what health insurance policy they have, right? If let's say you today have a policy which does not cover for outpatient treatment, and then one wants to go for outpatient treatment, then obviously the claim will get denied because the premium for that has not been paid. So there, I don't think
I'll halt you at this point. The problem is, Amit ji, then I'll tell you what happens. When I was studying in 2004 and 5 in medical oncology, lung cancer treatment used to be always an inpatient treatment or a daycare treatment. Let's see, some person takes the insurance at that point. Now what happens is in 2018 we get drugs which are better, which are simpler. So they are administered on an outpatient benefit and outpatient department, like because they're tablets. And this we are seeing in all cancers, which is going to happen, that better treatments are going to come with which are targeted therapies will be outpatient. And frankly, I'm a DM in medical oncology. I've done 2 super specializations. Frankly, even if you ask me what are the treatments in kidney elements which have to be covered, or what are treatment in an endocrine which are need to cover, and all the place, I also don't know them. How do you feel that a lay person who has no knowledge of medicine would come to know, okay, इसमें chemotherapy लिखा था यार, immunotherapy नहीं लिखा था, या फिर, you understand? I find it very difficult for as a doctor to myself to choose a insurance policy many times. How do you think that we could communicate? There is a lack of communication from both ways. How can we overcome this lack of communication? And one more point I would take here, and which I think Bharat would agree with me. A lot of time insurance companies insist on asking for what is the cause of cancer. Now, cause of cancer is multifactorial. We cannot, it's a random event many of times. You cannot pinpoint it. Actually, if by chance you write in the paper that the patient had habits like smoking or anything, the claims get rejected.
Sure. So I'll answer the second one first. See, you mentioned a very important point, right? You mentioned that one I think very, very truly, I don't think anybody can pinpoint to the exact reason for cancer, right? But see, again, I'll tell you where insurance companies would come from in this case. An insurance company, when they are selling a policy to a customer, they clearly ask, do you smoke or drink? Okay. That is a mandatory question in every health insurance policy. Now, the only reason where a claim would most likely get rejected in such a scenario is if the customer has not mentioned that he smokes, but in the diagnosis it comes out that he's a smoker. So see, the reason why cancer happened, one, it's very debatable why cancer happened. Even if whatever the reason is, cancer cannot be denied. But if there is a misdeclaration, like the customer said that I don't smoke, but the doctor thinks that smoking is the biggest reason for cancer, then again, see, the customer has basically breached the contract, and somewhere the insurance company has all the right. So you have to understand it's a legal contract. Because had the customer said that I smoke, then there would have been a slightly higher premium the customer would have paid, and then there is no way that the claim would have been denied. And Dr. Bharat, to your question.
That is right. I had a patient and they have declared that this patient was smoker and alcoholic, and the company kept on giving the insurance because it was in the declaration. What Vijay was trying to ask, like, this is like lymphoma, where I had personally spoken to the whoever saw doctor from the company. They kept on asking exact the cancer. So apart from there are cancers where you cannot pinpoint a cause, like a lymphoma. Why the lymphoma happens, a blood cancer. Why, if there are no genetic cause and smoking, And to a person who has already, the entire family, we treat our entire, patient's family as a, and psychological patient, because they are under tremendous trauma and anxiety. And then we are facing that, because the cost of the treatment is also not in few thousand, it sometimes goes in lakhs. And then this come as a trauma. Well, this is the first hindrance. Maybe, we are trying to ask, there has to be a communication. If you have a reason, then directly the treating doctor is ready to speak. It's not like that, no, I don't want to speak and I have filled the form, I will not. Many occasions, I had started the communication from my end. Even Vijay had, we had a couple of patients together. So he also spoken to the companies, and we try to convince, but that may not be possible for each and every doctor in the country. Some people are treating 50 patients in a day. That is what we are trying to communicate to you. That's it.
Absolutely. I think Dr. Bharat, that's a fair point. And see, so I'll tell you what, as Policy Bazaar, what we try to do. As Policy Bazaar, one, whenever we sell a health insurance policy, we make sure that we, over a recorded line, inform the customer that these are the terms and conditions in your policy. So by the way, like as you said, right, we also get a lot of customers coming back to us saying that my claim is rejected. We actually, for every such case, we're able to send back the recording. Sir, this is exactly what we had told you 2 years back, 5 years back, and we had told you this. The problem is now, so I'll give you a very simplistic example, just to explain this to all. Let's say if, and this used to happen earlier, people used to have health insurance policies where there were room rent limits, right? So typically, let's say a room in a hospital costs 10,000 rupees, but you had a policy which had a room rent limit of 5,000 rupees. Now, if the customer forgets it and goes to a 10,000 rupee room, then obviously the customer will feel bad because the claim is denied or paid only half of it. But see, you have to understand the insurance company is not at fault in that. Yeah. So somewhere I think it's insurance industry does get sort of it's a very high complaint category, right? As you would understand. So what ends up happening is a lot of complaints do come, a lot of hue and cry happens. But as you said in your message just now, in the chat message to everybody, there is IRDAI, there is the Ombudsman, there are brokers like Policy Bazaar who stand and really stand hard for our customers. Today, as Policy Bazaar, if any of our customers' claim gets denied because of a mistake that our guys made, we actually pay for those as well. See, again, the onus of knowing what you have bought lies with the customer. You can't buy something and then expect something else. There obviously, it's eventually a commercial deal that one does with with the customer and the insurance company. So you can't really pay for everything. But if what is being paid is in the realm of what the insurance policy is bought for, there is no way that a claim can be denied. We have just very recently, we got a claim approved of 30 lakh rupees. It was a cancer patient. The claim was rejected by the insurance company. There was no valid reason for rejection. We fought with the insurance company on the customer's behalf and we got the claim approved. So there is no way that a claim can be rejected unless there is a reason. That is the only thing for for all patients or for any policyholder to remember.
Okay, but any more questions or any more issues with respect to insurance you have?
I think that's if there is a mediator who can mediate in between, like as you said, the claim was rejected. There has to be a talk in between caregiver and the hello. Yeah. That's it. If there is a communication, I think the most of the issues are technical issues which can be sorted out. But problem is that there is a big communication gap. There is no discussion happening.
Yeah. I think Venkatji wants to make a comment. And
a quick one, Dr. Vijay. I think there's one key element missing in this entire process. One, the extent and pace of innovations which have been happening.
Yeah.
Either the regulator or many of the people in the ecosystem of oncology are probably not have much of a clue. Insurance being perhaps the last in the value chain. That is one. Historically, much of the reimbursements have all been on the issues of illness, not necessarily on wellness. That's the second bit. Third, in oncology, as you know very well, I don't need to tell you, much of it is still an unknown. And if you slot in specifically as to look, this is a protocol, this is what you need to do, no clinician will try any innovation at all. He'll end up doing the least common multiple rather than trying to do what is best in a patient's perspective. Fourth, and most importantly, we try to do it even in our Tata's days, we used to tell, see, cancer is something which is like 70% of cases are CUP, cancer of an unknown primary. To ask for somebody, what is it, where it happened, why it happened, especially in the kind of emotional turmoil where one person's foot is already in the grave. And we need to look at many of these things with a far greater degree of empathy and a value-based care system rather than as to what you signed, when you signed, and how you signed. Let's give a break on this. I think we are often missing the human element in this entire process and going by a very strict interpretation of a contract. If we put ourselves in the patient's shoes, we'll always find a way to say, how can I make this happen, rather than saying, clause ढूंढो कैसे मैं नहीं इसको दे सकता हूँ. So I think that's a clear disconnect, and many a times for a hospital system also, if there is an insurance patient, they don't want to take, because by the time the money comes in, it takes 7 or 8 months or even 12 months. They get stuck. I think Dr. Ramu will know, working capital will kill a hospital if you don't get your money upfront. I think these are some of the issues and challenges we need to deal with, and forums like this are good. At least we are able to express quite candidly without any quote unquote fear or favor. Many people would have to come into this together to make it happen, and we need to move to a much more value-based care approach rather than a cure and care approach, where we are allowed. And if you ask me, Elon Musk never went to any engineering college. He was an MSc in physics. He created the most brilliant Tesla or aviation company. If you say, did he go to engineering? He never went to Stanford or MIT. So he would not have qualified by any stretch of imagination for anything. So I think in that sense, all of us have an equal responsibility to make this happen.
Dr. Ramu, I would like to bring it to you. How do you feel challenges with insurance?
I think the challenges are obvious. I think it's already been stated. At the very fundamental level, I think there is a trust deficit. And the trust deficit is everywhere, actually. And it starts with the fact that we don't think that the patient is at the center of the whole situation. I think clinical practice, hospitals, insurance companies, providers, pharma companies, I think the entire situation has to put the patient at the center and then design systems that can actually make it more patient-centric. I think if you complicate a policy with 1,000 clauses, I don't think a normal human being can actually go through it and figure out what they're actually signing up for. So everything, actually, including cancer care in that matter, the complications, the number of types of cancers itself is so confounding. The number of types of treatments that the patient can get, whether they should do chemo first, surgery next, chemo next, immunotherapy. There is so much information and confusion alongside with the stress and the fear and the stigma, all simultaneously hitting the patient and the family. I think there needs to be, as Venkat mentioned, enormous empathy in all of us to deal with it and to construct or design hospitals and healthcare systems that are truly patient-centric. I think trust and patient centricity would be, in my opinion, fundamental. And anything other which we are currently seeing needs to be disincentivized. We need to have policies that incentivize a more organized protocol-based care approach, a comprehensive care approach, and actually pay for it appropriately. In my opinion, if you don't fund the care appropriately, you're going to compromise it as well. So while there is a large amount of focus on universal health coverage, which is absolutely necessary, by keeping the price point so low, I think we are almost getting the quality impacted in terms of what we can deliver. And we are almost saying that, something is better than nothing. That is quite arguable, actually. Is it's really better than nothing? So there are many challenges that a hospital faces, but we are doing our best to try and address it, I think, one patient at a time.
Yeah. Okay, I'll come to that quality because I have kept a slide on that. And I'll come back to you with that.
Sure.
So now another issue which we all wanted to discuss today, and that was regarding access to drugs. And now access to drugs is a difficult issue. Today itself, in between the two talks, I had to discuss with patient for TDX, that is trastuzumab deruxtecan, and it's the huge cost of it. So, and I'll come to Ankita here. Patient assistance program are important. In fact, me, Bharat, and one of our friends were actually with Dr. Kumar and all. We were trying to build up a site for patient information, and we actually wanted to include all drugs which are included in patient assistance program. None of the MNCs actually neither responded to our emails, neither were willing to share that information to be put on in public domain. And that's my first question, that if we are giving patient assistance program, why don't we disclose it in public domain so that most of the people benefit? And why are the criteria not displayed very in such a way that patients actually know about it, and they don't have to run behind the oncologist to give them the option that this option exists? And I'll have this question to Ankita.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dr. Patil, for that question. I'll start with a disclaimer that I'm not from the right function, so I come
Okay.
from the medical function. So,
Okay.
but I'll still, in general, I will try and address on the patient assistance programs, and especially because pharmaceuticals across all the organizations, especially the MNCs, we have moved a long way in terms of improving and improvising on the assistance programs that we are bringing, especially for the high value drugs. Of course, with an intention to improve the access and ultimately improve the patient outcomes. There is a lot of information around the patient assistance program, which is available to the treating physician. And also, when I talk about Pfizer, we do have an online platform where once the patient calls, he will get all the information about the assistance programs. There is nothing which is hidden in terms of like the transparency that we were talking about from an insurance perspective. Similarly, in the assistance programs as well, once the patient reaches the organization at the first call itself, he's made aware about all the clause which he probably would be looked into to provide the assistance program. The most important thing I would like to highlight here, Dr. Patil, is the indication, right? So from the regulatory perspective, the organizations are bound to provide the assistance program only in the approved indications and the approved combinations. And I think in all my experience, that is one area we realize that that is the commonest reason to reject any of the assistance programs to any of our drugs.
I have a question here, and that about indications. So the thing is that they would say that this indication is not approved by DCGI. The thing is that to get a DCGI approval, even if it has got US FDA approval, or if that publication has come in New England Journal and Lancet, or would it be in NCCN and ESMO guidelines, which most of the medical oncology, it takes a lead time of around 1.5 years. And it becomes difficult when you know that this drug is going to benefit the patient, but just because this process has not happened, the drug cannot be. Bharat, I wanted your opinion on this. Like, we know that this has happened with immunotherapy drugs also. There are 16, 17 indications for pembrolizumab, but DCGI covers only 5 to 6. For West, what do you do? You're muted, Bharat. Bharat, you're muted.
Yeah, so I will answer it in different way. Now, if this is only a technical problem, the company says this is not Indian authority approved. On the other hand, they say that suppose drug A is approved in esophagus metastatic cancer, the data can be extrapolated to it. It has happened. I have been part of the meetings. The same company also says that no, if you have an indication for this can be extrapolated to other indication. But when it comes to giving the drugs 1+1 program, this is the common citation comes from the company. And as you rightly said, it takes almost 1.5 years for the approvals to come. In the meantime, so many lives are lost, and we understand the importance of giving immunotherapy, because sometimes in a metastatic setting, this targeted therapy and immunotherapy can cure the patient. So this is very valid point. Dr. Vijay is asking, and there has to be some step should be taken from the companies, that within 6 months or 1 year or 1.5 years, if the drug is going to be approved by the Indian government, this should be including in the PAP. If you have a level 1 evidence approved by the guidelines which we follow in India.
Ankita, 1 second. Dr. Venkat has a comment. We'll take his comment and then you can address this. Dr.
Yeah, I think Dr. Vijay, just while not holding the brief for DCGI, in the little of evidence that what we ourselves have seen is many of the indications that what one would assume are available in the West. But when you look at the epidemiological profile of Indian patients, it's way off the whack. We ourselves know, you yourself have done a paper on low dose immunotherapy, which has literally put the fire in the bellies of many pharma companies, not just here, but across the world. Second, even if a normal marker like an EGFR, the expression of it in Indian population is 3 times more than that of elsewhere. Third, even for Pembro, the efficacy of it in Indian cohorts, based on some data, what we have seen is less than 14%. So I think DCGI in some ways is right in indicating that you need to test and get Indian data. Unfortunately, many of the pharma companies are not willing to run a India first trial or an India inclusive trial as part of the global process, for which people like yourselves would need to step in and encourage them to do it in the event that they have to get access to medicine. Second, another thing which many of the pharma might wish to seriously consider is voluntary licensing for low and middle income countries. Like say it has happened in the case of hepatitis B. It has happened in the case of remdesivir. There's no reason why it can't happen for cancer drugs, where the extent of impact on such a large population they would never get elsewhere. So I think these are some learnings which collectively we would have to come together on this to solve. Sorry to interrupt on this.
Yeah. Ankita, all yours.
Yeah. So again, Dr. Patil, just one comment I would make here is definitely all our endeavor is to get the approval of the indication as soon as we have one of the key country approval, whether it is US or Europe. And you can see more and more the organizations, and especially I can talk about Pfizer, that we are ensuring that these approvals come as early as possible. And there is a need for all of us together to raise this to the regulatory authorities as well, so that we can get an expedited approval from their side also. I would say the bottleneck is not from the organization's side in terms of extending these assistance programs, because we would be more than happy to extend this to as many patients as possible. It's just because we are bound by the regulation in terms of approved indications, and I think we all can work together there.
Okay. And any comments on this, the point which even Venkatji raised? Can we have an LMSE specific pricing?
See, Vijay,
Yeah.
Yeah, I must thanks to the companies, because see, if you look at their policies for costing in countries like low middle income countries, definitely people are getting benefited.
Yeah.
And definitely for each and every patient, I try my best. That's why I put forth my point that we should not lose the time, because for patients, these months also are very, very important. Whatever the companies, all the companies are doing is great, that they are now bringing the cost by 1/3 in most of the targeted therapy or immunotherapy. The 1+1 program, for example, for immunotherapy, or there are oral drugs like ALK inhibitors, which are given for 8 months and then lifelong free. So I have patients who have been now taking free drugs for 5 to 6 years. That's really good thing. And these patients, in spite of having brain metastasis, are surviving, which otherwise would not have been possible. Patients who took the drugs in the clinical trials way back in 2010 are still alive. So this shows, unless and until you have an access to the drug has no meaning. You have only written a paper, your team has written a paper where 97% of the people are not having access to a drug, then I don't look at the drug as a miracle drug at all. If single patient of mine is not having access, it's like it's injustice. And that is what we are now discussing, these issues. I think again, if there is a lot of communication happens in a stepwise manner, these issues can be sorted.
I agree with you, Bharat. And I was going to allude that with all the patient assistance programs which we have, the uptake of the newer drugs is in single digit percentages in the country. In fact, we would be coming up data even after, when you are using low dose, what is the uptake? And I don't think that uptake would be 50% or more, even when we are going to use the low dose. So if even after using 1/10 of the dose, if 50% of the population still cannot take the drug, then we should be really pondering on the prices, the way we are going to put it. And that's the reason why I just brought this issue. Ankita, all yours.
Yeah, I think Dr. Bhosale mentioned this, that now if you see, and especially when I talk about Pfizer, most of the innovative molecules that we are bringing in, even before the launch, we work on the India-specific pricing. And all the drugs are being launched with a patient assistance program, again, with the objective that the access can be reached to as many patients as possible. I mean, it came to my mind, and I just also want to give an example. Earlier, I think, and you must be aware about palbociclib in male breast cancer. Male breast cancer being a very, very niche indication, but still we realized that we were not able to pass on the benefit of palbociclib assistance program to these patients because this was not an approved indication. And believe me, we worked on like absolutely in an agile manner at brilliant speed, and we got the approval just for the fact that we can provide this access to the male breast cancer patients as well. So as I mentioned, it's not the intention from the industry, but it's just a collective work together so that we can get these indications approved as early as possible.
Yeah, and let's go ahead with this discussion. Now, when we talk about access, I think we cannot get away without talking about generic medicines in India, and we are the hub of it. And let me talk to Rajkumar ji here. Rajkumar ji, how do you think the generics can help to improve the access? And frankly, I also wanted to know how we decide the cost for a generic. Because I'll give you an example of a generic called TDM1, and I won't name the company here in public domain whose this generic is. This generic is also costly, and it's not that I can prescribe it to most of our patients. So if you can, we can have a discussion on these issues. Like how do we? I'm sure generic improves the access, but how do we control the cost of a generic also?
Yeah, I would like to put across some statistics as far as the access is concerned. When I came into oncology in the year 2004, so that time, if you see even the palpable tumors or non-palpable tumors, the percentage of population getting treated out of the incidence was below 20%. But after the generics made the therapy affordable and accessible, I think we have seen a sea change. When it comes to the number of patients getting treated today, it moved on from 10 to 20%, and some of the palpable tumors today, even up to 35% and 40% of patients are getting treated. I'm not ascribing it totally to the affordability of generics. It also goes to the credit of the state and the central schemes, be it Ayushman or the central schemes. And of course, the number of oncologists who have come into the picture. I still remember 20 to 21 medical oncologists used to pass out every year. That was in 2004. Today, we have 100 DM and DNB oncologists coming out. I still remember that anything outside the metro cities, people used to find it difficult. But today, even places like Latur, Barda, Aurangabad, everywhere you have DM medical oncologists and DM hematologists. So access definitely in terms of generics has translated into number of patients getting treated.
One question which I have is, this happens for the biosimilar, that every biosimilar has to do a trial and the DCJ looks at the data. Do you think it's necessary for every cytotoxic chemotherapy drug? Because what I see, what little bit understanding why I have the process is that only the first generic actually does the trial and the rest just follows. And we have some data which one was from another MNC which got published about what are the levels of the active drugs in Indian, which they picked up from generic markets, claiming that the activity in this was less. So do you think we need to have trials, patient data, not only bioequivalence data?
Yeah, let's look at the global standards. If you look at the US FDA, which is one of the most respected regulatory bodies in the world, we have, from our company, we have 30 drugs approved till date. None of them, all of them are synthetic chemistry. Let me just bifurcate them into synthetic chemistry and then the recombinant proteins, then the monoclonals. Yeah. So when we talk about the synthetic chemistry, none of these 30 drugs required a clinical trial. It's quite simple because in chemistry, you don't call anything as similar. There's no purpose in doing it. you have to get the exact replica of it, the same molecular formula, the same bonding in the same area. If it's a double bond, it has to be a double bond. So it has to be exactly same. So chemically, you have to establish the equivalence. So you need to submit the chemistry dossier to the regulator, be it US or the CDSCO. And the chemistry dossier is analyzed, and then your sample is analyzed at CDL, the Central Drug Laboratory. And they do various analysis. One of the simple analysis is HPLC. Chromatography, either a liquid or a gas chromatography, depending upon the compound, they do it, and then the equivalence is established, and then the chemistry dossier gives them an insight of the process that has been followed in the formulation, be it the API or the API to the formulation, what kind of process has been done. This is also looked into. So this establishes the chemical equivalence, and then they come into something called as BCS classification, biopharmaceutical classification system, which puts drugs into 4 compartments, the synthetic compounds into 4 compartments, like high solubility, low permeability, like it's based on solubility and permeability. So if it is category 1, where the solubility is high and permeability is high, category 3, where the solubility is high, where the permeability is less. So 1 and 3 does not require bioequivalence, even in US. Out of the 30 products which I talked about, the synthetic chemistry products, if it falls under BCS category 1 and 3, you don't even require a BE. A chemical equivalence is more than sufficient. The global standard for approving chemical drugs, synthetic drugs, is about the BCS classification. And if it falls in BCS2 and BCS3 category, where the solubility is less, irrespective of the permeability, you need to conduct a crossover bioequivalence. And when you talked about the amount of active substance available, let's say in serum or whatever kind of tissue which you have tested, it all boils down to the quality which is delivered by that particular company. If you really want to put, I feel there should be a stricter regulatory on quality control.
And what would you say for biosimilars?
Yeah, biosimilars is a different space because you cannot use the word like same. You have to use the word similar, because the amino acid sequence, even though it's the same protein which you're talking about, certain amino acid sequence need not match because the way in which you have created the protein. So when you
very like when we were at Tata, we used to have audits every 5 years, yearly audits. We would look at how many patients dropped out, what were our adverse events with respect to the international standards. Do we see such audits happening in most of the corporates? And whether we see with this needs to be put in some regulatory way that these audits are done. We have this data that we are making more hospitals, we are making more protocols, but are we maintaining the quality?
Oh, you're right. So I think the key is access, right? To first of all, nobody is going to a hospital as a patient to say that I've got cancer. I think that's really the last thing that's there in any patient's mind. They probably have some symptoms that are prolonged, and they go to a general physician or a local hospital, and it escalates over a period of time, hopefully as fast as it can, to get to the point where the diagnosis is accurate. I think a lot of time and even money, and I would say precious time, because a lot of the patients that we still see are delayed. And I think Tata is a classic example. I think you've seen patients from all over the country and even outside who come very often very late because they have not been diagnosed very early. And I think this is the first thing that we need to address is, can we look at early detection and early diagnosis locally by bringing in expertise in a different set of forms. The expertise continues to be concentrated in the urban areas. There's a lot of efforts. I think we can go around, but there is enormous amount of efforts. But there are also reasons why this is the case, right? Urban centers have the better infrastructure, better schools, oncologists want to live there. So there is a good number of reasons why there is concentration in the urban centers. while there is more focus on improving rural centers and access through reimbursements, promotions, incentives, and all of that for the oncologists to move there. This is a process that will take time. I think in the immediate term, we need to focus on, can we get the diagnosis for those patients, even if they are remotely located. And I think there's a lot of work, and technology is definitely going to help us there. I think that's the way I see it.
I would have an opinion here from Venkatji. Venkatji, you have been working in this space about how we could improve the diagnostic abilities at remote places. Could you have some comment on this?
So in this, sir, I think Dr. Ramu and many others, even prior to this call, have echoed something which is at times might touch a raw nerve, but by the time a person unfortunately reaches a cancer center, 7 out of 10 times it's already too late. So we cannot but overemphasize the need for early detection and get the diagnostics right in the first instance. And even you earlier mentioned on particular access to drugs or a patient support program. If you recall, sometime back, we had been working with Kumar sir on when any patient comes in, irrespective of what drug is available for whom, is there a possibility to do a very large NGS panel test at a price point of a PET CT? Hopefully, ideally, a whole genome and a whole transcriptome test. It's like when anyone is asking, you are saying, look, I want to answer question 3. For question 3, I know how to answer. In this, you have answered everything. Let anybody pick what answer they want to pick as a digital public goods platform. And let innovations kick in. If you also look at in a similar manner, KRAS was looked at as a driver and or a particular cause for cancer. It took 11 years for Amgen to come out with a drug. So in many cases, much of it is an unknown. So therefore, initiatives like this, which we started off in trying to get many entities together, if you really leapfrog in terms of getting the detection early and the diagnostic right in a distributed fashion, much closer to a person's home, we perhaps don't need a replica of a Vijay Patil at every single location. On the back of your knowledge, a good general physician can give chemo at a targeted therapy at a. Right now, as you know, subcutaneous injections are given at a person's home. They've never visited a hospital today. So I think these are some innovations which we should embrace. And like what has happened in the area of telecom, India can leapfrog. We directly migrated from a 2G to a 4G. And in our view, we can definitely migrate to a precision medicine protocol much faster and much ahead at a much more affordable construct than what many others have seen, with a value-based standard of care that is equal, if not better than most places. So there is value in it for literally everybody.
Okay. To that, I'll just share, we had done a retrospective analysis in Tata why people come late. And I think what point you brought about and Mr. Ramu brought about is correct. The primary delay happens at the process. The patient reaches the first doctor in a median time of 30 days, but then it takes around 4 to 5 months in between from them to say that this is something cancer and you need to move ahead to a cancer, to see a cancer doctor. And we actually saw that from the first symptom to reach to Tata, the median delay was around 9 months in head and neck cancer patient. And we are talking about head and neck cancer patient where 70-80% are oral cavity cancer, which actually you don't need any sophisticated instrument. You see it that it's there.
Yeah, dentist can pick up that symptom.
Yeah, you see it's that there. So I'll have a comment here from Dr. Bharat. Dr. Bharat, you have been involved in some home care plans and you have been visiting in Goa and providing chemotherapies in Goa. And Venkatji brought about an important issue that we need to see how we can provide access close to the home rather than getting them to Mumbai, because one of the analysis which I had done, and this was for a study of video follow-up versus clinical follow-up, in which the surprise was it is not the doctor's fees or it's not the hospital fees or it's not the medication which was costly. The most costly was was the stay in Mumbai, and the cost of a stay in Mumbai was the major cost.
Yes, Vijay. Yes. So this is a very important point, Vijay, and we have discussed personally in the past Now I'm thankful. Mr. Venkat is also there, and you and me come from the Tata philosophy, and I have many times shared on the public forum that we are really fortunate to be trained in Tata Institute, where a culture comes, and it percolates into each and every employee. And I'm happy seeing Mr. Venkat is also trying to reach out to the grassroots where we as a caregiver, once we reach at that level for the treatment of patient, we get opportunity for the prevention also indirectly. So we get opportunity to counsel the relatives coming in over there. As I told, we are very fortunate. We are sitting in Mumbai. You advise a PET scan, it is just next door. Patient is sometimes, most of the time, they are paying class. But it is the major problem is in the rural areas, and that's where I realize, and I have never tried to sit in one place. If you see in Mumbai also, I have practiced across South Bombay and periphery, where the patient population comes from different background. Goa is a place, still there is only one medical oncologist. Recently, one of our colleagues shifted over there. So entire state, there are only two medical oncologists, and largely, a place where tourism is also available, health tourism. There are no healthcare providers. We started 2017, and in a part of Thane, we have set up a daycare. We have one more daycare in Borivali side. So where we realize that Mumbai to Mumbai connectivity is a problem sometimes for the patient. Patient from Borivali side coming to South Bombay is a big problem. Patient says, no, we can't travel. No, there are various reasons. In Mumbai, one part to other part, traveling is also costly. As you mentioned, staying in Mumbai, outside Mumbai, people don't come to Mumbai for the fear of it feels like going to USA for people who are in rural Maharashtra, not only other parts of India. I'm telling you, this
On a lighter note, sir, forget that getting people from TMH Parel to go to Attract is like India.
so, so that is very, very important. I know the bus goes from Parel to. So we have started the Borivali Center, where we have collaborated with Nana Palkar, which is again a very good, great NGO which have been helping to many patients who come outside Mumbai, and they have a fantastic facility in Parel. So they have set up one daycare in TMH. We knew now the TMH daycare is running 24 hours. That's what Vijay told me last year. My time when I left TMS 10 years back, the daycare was actually a daycare, not a night care. Now it is day and night care. The 24-hour it's open. That many of the patients are not getting chemotherapy dates. So this collaboration between Nana Palkar and Sunrise Oncology, we provided the healthcare support, the consultants as well as the trained chemotherapy nurses. And I think it is full. Vijay, there is a waiting list in Borivali also. Every day there are 15 to 20 patients are getting chemotherapy who travels from TMS to Borivali, and absolutely funded through NGO supports. And TMH is also doing a great job. Nana Palkar has done a great job. In Goa, we have set up a clinic where me along with my three of my colleagues, we do visits fortnightly. Initially, we used to visit once in a month. Now, with the collaboration, unitedly we stand and we work together. The care can reach to the local place. And in Goa, we have trained the intensivists as well as the oncosurgeons who look after when we are not there. And we are trying to develop the chemotherapy protocols on AI basis, where minimum mistakes happens, because everything will be monitored from here. The protocol will not be delivered unless and until it is scrutinized over here. We use, thanks to the telemedicines which come up in a big way during COVID times, and we have been utilizing on regular basis, and patients are being evaluated. And that is possible. Actually, COVID has given us a time period where we have tested all these newer innovations, and I see that these are coming into practice in a rapid way. So that is how we manage the Goa Center, where we visit physically once in 2 weeks, but in between the patients are being taken care through the telemedicines also. The cost is coming down significantly because of this. A patient who is supposed to you used to actually come to Mumbai, taking the flights, are getting the same care over there with multidisciplinary team. Whenever we visit Goa, we make sure that all the files are audited, as you mentioned rightly. I personally do audit. You and me have done audits in Kolkata for an alternative medicine, which actually. So we had gone and checked the audit. So thanks to you that because of you also I started doing audits. I was a part of the ethics committee. So we do audits of those papers. The patients are being discussed in multidisciplinary ways. So that kind of a care is possible. What has shown no way that this kind of a care is possible even at rural areas.
James has wants to make a comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to add when we talked about access to cancer centers, for cancer therapy. The most pertinent question is, even in 2022, why you have sub 40 percentage, below 40% of patients getting treated of the incident population or the prevalent. So it is not just to do with the affordability or the availability of the specialist. It is also to do, as Dr. Bhosale was repeatedly telling, around 65% of patients, the incident population is there in the rural area. It is also to do with the literacy and the awareness. Most of the patients are unaware. And in this, definitely awareness through digital media. Today, everybody is carrying a smartphone and everybody has a fancy of watching a lot of videos. I think as pharmaceutical companies, many of us have started spreading awareness through these 2-minute, 3-minute videos. So awareness needs to be increased, and PHC, the primary health center physicians, need to be trained. Because if they are trained well, I think they can point the patients to the regional cancer centers for an early detection and a better outcome. And even among the educated population, a lot of myths are there that needs to be busted. The most educated society also, even if when they palpate a tumor also, still they are not willing to visit an oncologist because of fear. So even the fear needs to be busted.
Yeah. Venkat, you wanted to make a comment?
One comment, Dr. Vijay, and I'll shut up. I'm unfortunately hogging this. In terms of what ideally might wish to be done, and in some ways, my colleague Dr. Moni Abraham has demonstrated that in Kerala and a couple of other places by working on the notion of community as a cancer center without walls or boundaries. As a test pilot, he tested out in Idukki and Ernakulam being having 6 or 7 cancer centers, and Idukki having nothing. In last 12 or 18 months, close to 400,000 people were risk assessed. The first modality was a phygital, which is a combination of a digital questionnaire plus a physical construct using any of the existing machinery that might be. It could be a panchayat worker, it could be an ASHA, A&M, or asymptomatic people when they are waiting for something else in a multi-speciality hospital, getting them risk assessed. And based on that, developing a navigation hierarchy through which we have, at this point of time, using a command center approach, managed from precancerous to cancer, early stage cancer to late stage, close to 25,000 patients. This would have never happened. All of them, or many of them, could get time and a cost which otherwise they would have ended up in a cancer center. And all of this had been curated in a digital first hierarchy. So irrespective of whichever hospital you go, you find the same electronic medical record interoperability, as the case might be. And by design, this was built as a participatory system, not as a proprietary system. And if you go in most places, you go, what works in one location doesn't work in another. And this we had seen based on our own past experience in Tatas of having built and commissioned 20 odd cancer centers ranging from TMC Calcutta to several of the state or quasi-state backed entities. It is very difficult to get congruence across multiple DMGs. But if that intent, intensity, and integrity of wanting to solve it is there, we have found this definitely can happen. And instantly, the Honorable Prime Minister gave a chance for us to present what we did about 3 weeks ago. He was very keen, and his parting comment was, "Jo bhi kar rahe ho, bahut logon ko balai karne jaisa kaam karo." So the state also is very keen now to get to this early detection and getting the diagnostic model, for which all of us would have, again, I keep repeating, all of us would have to, we may not get the highest factor of engagement, but certainly we can get to a least common multiple of an association. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with you. Early detection would solve a lot of problems. Like, for example, I used to keep telling this. Tata sees around 40,000 patients in TMH Mumbai and another 20-30,000 in the Attract Center. But frankly, we had the capacity to do only 3,000 to 4,000 surgeries, which means that we were not even catering to 10% of the patients which used to come here, and somewhere down they were going to somewhere else. So when you look at with the Globocon figures, Tata like institutes do not even cater to 1 to 2% of the patients in this country, and we need many more centers to actually take care of them. With that, I would we have actually exceeded the time, and I would want one comment from each one of you. One thing which needs to change in 2023, and if we can do that, cancer space would be much better to work with. One comment from everyone, and we'll start from Venkatji. You.
early detection, get the diagnostics right in the first instance, and get every single decision done by a tumor board, which is multidisciplinary.
Okay, okay, okay. Suresh ji?
I think work on the trust deficit, focus on patient centricity in every action, and make all decisions comprehensive and governance driven.
Okay, James ji?
Yeah, when we look at the country per the north, south, east, and west, the south and west have got a good penetration of super specialty centers for cancer and the specialists available. But when you look at a state like UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, or for that matter, even West Bengal, outside Kolkata, even up to Kuch Bihar, you don't have proper centers, northeast. I think this part of the country, that the north and the east need to have more specialists, more specialty centers, and definitely awareness has to start from the primary health physician, and we need to increase the awareness among the public.
Okay. Ankita?
Yeah, I think both the aspects. One is the early detection, early diagnosis, and the referrals of these patients at the right time to the specialist centers, and then the access to the drugs. And it's not a single person or a single organization's efforts that would matter, but together, the public, the public institutes, the private institutes, and the non-profit organizations to come together and work comprehensively to improve the cancer care.
You actually give the plan for next 5 years. Okay, Bharat, one liner, Bharat.
Yeah, one line. So see, best treatment is the right of each and every Indian patient, and we all must work together to make this goal possible.
Yeah. With that, I would say thank you to all. And I'm sorry if I have touched some raw nerves, because that was what Vivek had told me to do. Okay, and this was a great opportunity. Many a time we interact amongst medical oncologists, then amongst radiation oncologists and surgical oncologists. We never get a gamut of other people's to interact. So I learned a lot of things. Thank you, Vivek ji, for the opportunity, and thank you, panelists, for speaking your heart out. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, organizers Vivek and Vijay.
Thank you, Vivek ji.
Thank you.
Greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. And